Hello friends, welcome to Gardening with Creekside. I am Jenny and here we are in Michigan at the fantastic cottage that we have gotten to stay at. The sweet folks at Spring Meadows just really invited us and said, hey, we've got this great guest cottage, you want to stay? And we said, sure we do. So what we're going to do today is just really go over, it's been a busy day. We have had a lot of fun today touring two of just the most fantastic nurseries. So we started our morning at Spring Meadow, and Spring Meadow is the source for all of your proven winners shrubs. So if you have a fantastic proven winners shrub, it came from Spring Meadow. Spring Meadow, first of all, folks are just so kind, so welcoming. We definitely felt at home there. We spent a lot of time there and it was really, really interesting. So while we were there doing the tour, we took a lot of footage, and so we're just going to kind of walk through, and as I'm talking about it, we're going to show you what we saw. So obviously at Spring Meadow, it is a massive nursery. It is just a huge scale operation, and so because of that size, they have to use a lot of automation. It just makes sense to use machines to help in their production. As we say, work smarter, not harder. Now, they still have a humongous size workforce of people. What they're doing is they're using machines maybe in a smarter way to do some of the tedious work, and they're using those same folks in different areas. So one of the things that we found was really interesting was what they call ISO machines. And so this basically is and I am really simplifying this, folks, it is this computerized robot that goes through and picks out these little tiny cuttings, because these shrubs are started from cuttings. So a cutting is simply, it's just the tip of the plant. And so this robotic arm senses where these cuttings are, it picks them up, moves them over, and sticks them into the tray where they will later on be moved out so that they can be rooted and grown into shrubs. So that was really interesting. I think they had 5 machines there, I think maybe. Of course, machines break down, so there are folks that are sitting there watching, making sure that everything's happening, but they run these little conveyor belts. You know, all the cuttings are just jumbled on there together. The conveyor belt will actually bounce to kind of bounce the cuttings around. That arm gets them, picks them, and sticks them, and then off the line they go. And then they are moved on out into a growing area where they will then root. So that was a really fun one. Then there was, and I don't remember, it's basically a sorter. And so, of course, you have seen what we do at Creekside Nursery, right? When we are growing out the liners and the containers, the plants that we have. And as you know, if you've ever started plants from seeds, right? Some do better than others. Some are a dud, some don't take, some really thrive. Well, this sorter is this fantastic computer run machine that will take the tray as it comes in and sorts the plants. So it will pick out the really strong, healthy plants, and that will put them all in one tray. Then it'll take the plants that are doing, they're doing pretty good, right? They'll take them out, put them in a separate tray. Then they'll take the ones that are really kind of duds, they're a little iffy, take those, put them in a tray, and then they will take the ones that have there's been no growth, it's just dead, it's an empty cell. They'll take that, put it in a tray, and of course that tray gets tossed. So then they can take all of these plants at a rapid rate and sort through best, better, and good, and then send them in the appropriate direction. It was absolutely fascinating to sit there and watch that. As Josh said, Josh was our tour guide, did an amazing job. He said it reminds him of the Laverne and Shirley, right? Because of that kind of line of the sorting. So that was the second machine that was very, very interesting to us. And then the third one that we were just in absolute awe over was the trimmer. So we have talked a lot about this on Gardening with Creekside, how important proper pruning is, not only for your annuals, your perennials, and your shrubs. So the folks at Spring Meadow, all shrubs, they are continually pruning these shrubs so that they are nice and tight and well branched and compact and nice, strong, healthy vigor. Well, you can imagine when at Spring Meadow, their goal is to stick 1 million plugs a day. That's currently what their goal is. 1 million plants get stuck every day. So imagine how many millions and millions and millions of plants that we are talking about. Greenhouses are massive, huge, all sorts of great shrubs. So you've got to prune these shrubs. So they have a fantastic machine that basically they kind of invented, and it will go along and you can set it at different depths. So if you just need a light pruning or you need a more severe pruning, it goes along, it clips them, then there's this soft brush that as it clips it, it grabs up those clippings, sends them on a little conveyor belt. The conveyor belt sends them down to the end of the line and dumps it onto the concrete where they have, somebody is there, sweeps it all up, those get collected and tossed. So they can do this amazing pruning in a very uniform, very efficient manner in just a matter of minutes, where it would take literally hours to do. So that was an extremely interesting, very fascinating, again, to watch this whole process. It was, basically kind of like a two-man team. One fellow was looking and saying, okay, we need to go up, it needs to go down, we need to come back, we need to go back, forth. And so the other guy was doing the controls. And so they were working together in tandem to get these shrubs pruned. So those were those first 3 really pieces of automation that were really interesting for us to watch. One of the really key points that Jerry and I really walked away with at Spring Meadow was just the absolute enormity of their operation. We need to find out the number of how many acres they have of plants that are in greenhouses. It is just as far as the eye could see, and you're just standing in this room and it's just greenhouse upon greenhouse, and these are trays that maybe they have 72 plants in them, and it's just so the millions and millions of shrubs that are in there was just absolutely enormous and really kind of mind-blowing. Again, here at Spring Meadow, they use a lot of biological controls to control as far as pests that they have. Japanese beetles are an issue here. So all of their greenhouses, even though the roofs may be open or the sides are open, they still have those coverings to keep those Japanese beetles out. And then of course, like we've talked about before, the beneficial wasp, the yellow stickies to get those kinds of bugs out. And so they're using, of course, the recycled water to water these plants. So very much that green movement of using natural resources in a positive way to grow these plants for us and for you. Now, we ended our time at Spring Meadow with Judson, and Judson basically is over R&D. So R&D, research and development. This is where all the fun new shrubs are coming to be. Now, we could not take any photos or videos of these areas, so you're just going to have to take my word for it that there are going to be a lot of fun new shrubs coming out on the market even next year, the next coming years, and in years in the future. Folks, Proven Winners has gotten their name for a reason. These plants have proven to be winners over time. And a shrub, it could be out in R&D for 10 years before it ever comes to the market, because they want to make sure that it really is going to be a fantastic shrub for us, the consumers. So the types of testing that they go through and the evaluations and the data is absolutely mind-blowing. So they're looking at bloom size, they're looking at bloom shape, leaf shape, how early does the plant bloom, how long does it bloom. It was really interesting. I'm not giving away any little secrets here, but each plant, a flowering plant, would have like a yellow tag on it, so they could punch every week. They would come through, and if it's in flower, then they punch it. So it's just a simple way you could look at the tag, and if it has a bunch of holes in it, that means it has been blooming for a bunch of weeks. So that was just something that they're looking at. They look at, a flowering shrub, does it naturally shed the old blooms, or do those old blooms stick to the plant and make it look unsightly? So all sorts of different criteria go into evaluating what makes the cut and what doesn't make the cut. There are, again, just some really fun new plants that I think I know you're going to be excited about, because we were actually in the production side of Spring Meadow and I saw this plant and I was like, what is that? This is something new. I don't know that color. And so I went to go look on the tag and it was something I did not know. And then when we were over in R&D, I saw the full size of this plant and I was like, is this the same thing as that? And they said, yes, it is. It's stunning, it's gorgeous, so I think it should be coming out next year. Again, I know this is teasing you, but you just have to trust me that there are going to be a lot of fantastic new plants being introduced, like I said, this year and the coming year. It was really fascinating. And for my sweet Southern fellow folks, Judson is a Southerner at heart. He was born and raised in Alabama, then was in Texas, and now he's in Michigan. So he definitely has a heart for our Southern climate and understands what it takes to have plants that survive in the South. So we definitely hit it off. I knew he had to be a Southerner within like 3 seconds of him opening his mouth, because if you know, then you know. And then on his water bottle, it had y'all on it. So I was like, oh, you're my people. So it was really nice to know that Proven Winners is not only coming out with some fantastic plants that are nice and cold hardy, but also for us in the South that will do great in our heat and humidity. So that was our morning at Spring Meadow. It was wonderful. Then we jumped in the car and drove about 20 minutes south, I believe, and we went to our sweet friends at Walter's Gardens. Now, Walter's Gardens is the home of all the Proven Winner perennials. So we have talked about Walter's. If you've been around Creekside for any length of time, you know how much we love and adore Walter's Gardens. We have a great relationship with them, and that is where we get all of our perennials from, whether it's Proven Winners or it's non-branded. They started as a bare root nursery. That is their heart and soul. Of course, they have developed into other areas as well. But this was just fascinating to go through. Again, a lot of, they're using automation, but they're also using folks to propagate those plants. But was really fascinating when we went to Walter's was that because they are perennials, they have the vast majority of their perennials are grown out in the fields. I believe Laura said it was like 1,700 acres. I believe that's right. Correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, but I believe it was 1,700 acres that they have in field production plants. And so like all your daylilies, your hibiscus, your lavender, just about every plant that we can imagine, your hostas, everything is grown out in the fields. And then depending on what the plant is, maybe that plant is in the ground, like hostas are in the ground for 2 years, where I think the daylilies were in the ground for a year. So depending on the crop will depend on how long it is in the ground, so that that root system can really develop and grow before they dig it up, box it up, and send it to us. Did find it really interesting that Laura was saying that in these fields, they do a 3-year rotation, right? So if they have a perennial in this, planted in this row or this section, they will not replant it in there the next year. So they do a crop rotation with like beneficial crops to replenish the soil. Then the 3rd year, they do another cover crop where they actually till that one under so that that organic matter is put back into the soil. So they're very, very conscious of how they are treating the land, and that the earth is, of course, one of their greatest resources to grow these fantastic perennials for us. But just to drive through and just to see these big swatches of, denim and lace, or the daylilies, or what have you, it was just absolutely amazing to sit there and watch it. Then, of course, we got to go through their trial gardens, which was really interesting. I enjoyed the way that they had these set up. So as you know, every year new perennials are introduced every year. So they have a section in their trial garden where there's 5 nice long beds, and so each bed is dedicated to a year. So they go all the way back from 5 years from now, that they have all those new introductions in that bed. So those perennials will stay in the ground for 5 years, and then on every year that the oldest bed gets dug up and then the new plants get put in there. So we got to go through and see 5 years worth of new introductions, and to see how they are performing. Another great thing that they have in their trial gardens, and again, if you are in the area, you can stop by and go in and just kind of tour these gardens. But they have all of their summerific hibiscuses in one huge long row. And this was great because you could see how, you know, Cranberry Crush compares to another red hibiscus. So they were, one of each of the hibiscuses was in this nice long row. So you could see how Edge of Night was more tight and compact and kind of low, as opposed to, say, Barry Alston, a little bit taller, right? So you could see and really compare one hibiscus to the next hibiscus, because of course we know and love those perennial hibiscus. They are just amazing. And then they have just tons of trial gardens, where they have put, not trial gardens, excuse me, display gardens, where they have put all of these fantastic plants in there. I think one of my favorite spots though was their Hosta Beds, because that was a really kind of a relatively new one, only about maybe a year or two old, where they have, it is just filled with all the different kinds of hostas. I think Walters offers like 100 different varieties of hostas. So you would have these big, huge hostas. You would have little tiny petite hostas. Some have these gorgeous white stalks. Some have almost a dark burgundy stalk. There was one that would have this beautiful purple bloom, but the bloom doesn't open, so it would stay closed. So it's just really neat to see how you can put all of these hostas, ferns, shade-loving perennials together in a bed, and it's absolutely gorgeous and peaceful. So again, we just had an amazing time. Just to see the scope and scale of these nurseries is just absolutely mind-blowing, and the thought that goes into every single tiny little detail in growing these plants and then getting them to us so that we can grow them out and give them to you, the customer, that you can have them in your garden. So I hope you have found this fun and informative. It has been quite a whirlwind of a day. It is about almost 9 o'clock here in Michigan, and the sun is getting low. The gardens are absolutely beautiful. The river behind us is just as peaceful as can be. It has been an absolutely wonderful trip, and we have thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. As always, the folks at Proven Winners have just been very gracious and kind, and we so appreciate them hosting us here. Again, it's been a great trip. As always, thank you so much for gardening with Creekside. Y'all have a fantastic day. We'll see you in the next video. Bye, friends.